Tonight on The Buzz, we have an in-depth conversation with Oscar-winning editor William Goldenberg, a look at new trends in visual effects, and an update on how the Writers Guild managed to make just about everyone in Hollywood angry. We start with Jonathan Handel, contributing editor on entertainment labor issues for The Hollywood Reporter. Last week, a secret Writers Guild meeting managed to anger just about everyone associated with writers in Hollywood. Tonight, Jonathan explains why. Next, Shain is the Chief Product Officer of Mocha for Boris effects. Tonight, he shares his thoughts on new trends and technology in effects that he's expecting next month at the NAB show. Next, Nilo is head of training for FX Factory. Tonight, he explains how he creates a compelling demo for new effects software, FX Factory's new YouTube channel, and key trends in effects that he's looking to see at NAB next month. Next, William Goldenberg won the Academy Award, BAFTA, and ACE Awards for film editing, with Ben Affleck's Best Picture winner, Argo, plus Oscar nominations for editing The Imitation Game, Zero Dark 30, Seabiscuit, and The Insider. Tonight, as part of NAB Insight, William Goldenberg shares his thoughts on editing. All this, plus James DeRuvo with our weekly doddleNEWS update. The Buzz starts now.
Since the dawn of digital filmmaking,
authoritative,
one show serves a worldwide network of media professionals,
current,
uniting industry experts,
production,
filmmakers,
post-production,
and content creators around the planet.
Distribution.
From the media capital of the world in Los Angeles, California, the Digital Production Buzz goes live now.
Welcome to the Digital Production Buzz, the world's longest-running podcast for the creative content industry, covering media production, post-production, and marketing around the world. Hi, my name is Larry Jordan. When we were first planning this show, we wanted to devote all our time to talking about current trends and technology in effects as part of our lead-up to the NAB show in April. But then life intervened. The Writers Guild is threatening major upheaval for television and feature film writers that looks to reverberate through the entire industry starting April 7th. So we needed to make room for Jonathan Handel to explain what's going on. Then we had a great opportunity to chat with Oscar-winning film editor William Goldenberg about his philosophy of editing, along with a preview of his upcoming keynote on the future of cinema at NAB. So we needed to make room for him as well. Still, our conversations with Shain and Nilo about effects are fascinating, especially when Ross starts talking about new technology that is making holograms real. This will be a fascinating show. By the way, if you enjoy The Buzz, please give us a positive rating and review in the iTunes store. We appreciate your support to help us grow our audience. And now it's time for our weekly doddleNEWS update with James DeRuvo. Hello, James.
Happy Thursday, Larry.
And a wonderful Thursday, and 5 weeks to go until NAB.
5 weeks and my feet are already hurting.
So, James, what's the news?
Before I begin, I want to encourage every content creator and filmmaker who listens to The Buzz to go and see the documentary Apollo 11 in IMAX. Created with over 700 hours of never-before-seen 70-millimeter documentary footage, this film is simply stunning. A time machine that captures the excitement of that historic space mission. And trust me, Larry, on IMAX, I'm serious, it's like you're there. It's amazing. It's probably one of the best documentaries ever made.
All righty. Well, we've now got Apollo 11, the documentary, on our list of things to see. What's on your list of news?
USB 4 has come out of nowhere with Thunderbolt 3 speeds of up to 40 gigabits per second, but only with USB 4 certified cables. It'll also be USB 3 backwards compatible.
How does this announcement fit in with current versions of USB?
With all the confusion surrounding the renaming of the USB 3 spec, now USB 4 comes, it makes me wonder, why did the USB International Forum even bother to rename USB 3? Some think that USB 4 is merely Thunderbolt 3 gone open source with speeds that are nearly identical to the spec. These speeds are only capable, however, through USB 4 certified cables, and we probably won't see it hit the market for about 18 months or so. Plenty of time for Thunderbolt 4 to arrive if it ever does.
It's finally good news that USB is getting faster, and now we have yet another new name, USB 4. What's next?
Blackmagic has announced their Generation 2 Ursa Mini Pro. This second generation 4.6K image sensor has the Generation 4 Blackmagic design color science, shoots up to 150 frames per second in 4K using Blackmagic RAW, and 300 frames per second in HD in Blackmagic RAW. It'll have 15 stops of dynamic range, which seems to be the ceiling at the moment for dynamic range. And Blackmagic has also made Blackmagic RAW available for the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K through this Cinema Camera 6.2 update.
Well, wait a minute. Doesn't Blackmagic normally announce new products at NAB in the spring and IBC in the fall?
Well, normally they do, but Blackmagic last year shifted its major hardware announcements away from NAB in favor of their own webcast showcase. I find that interesting, and while this appears to be a completely redesigned camera from the ground up, the Ursa Mini Pro Gen 2 maintains the same ergonomic casing and lightweight footprint. Price is $59.95, and Grant Petty hinted that Generation 1s are likely to get a price cut until their stocks deplete, since the Generation 2 is going to completely replace it. But I'm really excited about Blackmagic RAW coming to the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, which is already turning heads for its impressive image quality, and some calling it the best entry-level cinema camera on the market.
Okay, that's Blackmagic Design. What's our third story this week?
I'm talking to you on the Rodecaster Pro podcaster mixing board, and they're getting, through a firmware update, multi-channel recording via USB output of up to 14 tracks using your computer recording software.
Why is this update so interesting to you?
Content creators are more than just video makers and filmmakers these days. They have podcasts, they have live broadcasts, they have all these different things to reach their audience. And the Rodecaster Pro is really the must-have mixing board for podcasting and live audio mixing. For under $700, you just can't beat all you can do with it.
All good to know. What other stories are you and your team working on this week?
Other stories we're following: Frame.io is now SOC Type 2 compliant for greater online security. YouTube disables comments on videos featuring children due to advertiser concerns. And Compact Flash Express will likely take over the XQD market, thanks to firmware updates from Nikon and Sony. And it now seems genius that Nikon stuck with the XQD format in their Z-series mirrorless cameras when everybody thought they were crazy.
Amazing what hindsight can do.
Indeed.
James, where can we go on the web to find these and all the other stories you're working on?
All these stories and more can be found at doddleNEWS.com.
And James DeRuvo is the editor-in-chief of DoddleNEWS and joins us every week. James, we'll see you next Thursday.
See you next week.
Turning to other news, it's time for Jonathan Handel. He's an entertainment and technology attorney of counsel at Troy Gould in Los Angeles. He's also the contributing editor on entertainment labor issues for The Hollywood Reporter, which is why we're chatting with Jonathan today. Hello, Jonathan. Welcome back.
Larry, thanks for having me.
Jonathan, let's get right into it. What's happening with the Writers Guild?
The Writers Guild is trying to change the rules that apply to talent agents. The guilds, like the state of California and the state of New York, regulate talent agents. Each of the unions has a set of rules called an agency agreement or a franchise agreement. There are various names for it. Almost a year ago, the Writers Guild sent a one-year notice of termination. So the existing rules expire April 6th. On April 7th, the Writers Guild is likely to impose new rules unilaterally. And that's something that the talent agencies are very, very, very uncomfortable with, to put it mildly.
Well, why does the Writers Guild want to make changes in the first place?
There are three reasons. One of them is a basic question of power. We think of the talent agencies and the guilds as both being very powerful. They both serve an overlapping constituency of writers in this case, and they have their own separate functions. Writers Guild negotiates the basic union agreement, the basic wages, and so forth. The talent agents negotiates wages above that for people who have more power and more standing in the industry. So two organizations, one overlapping constituency. That's the way it works in practice. But the guild says, look, as a matter of very basic power, unions have the exclusive right to represent the unionized workers, in this case the writers, and therefore any power that the agents have, notwithstanding the fact that they live in, that they have these beautiful, expensive buildings and lots of money, any power that the agents have derives from us, the union, and we're going to dial it back. Now that's number one. The next two are two specific practices that the agents engage in that the guilds don't like. One of them is called packaging. There are two aspects to packaging. One is you take a script, you bring your agent a script, the agent says this is great. The agent says this would be great for George Clooney, who just happens to be a client of our agency as well. So we're going to package the script with George Clooney. We're going to persuade Clooney that, see if Clooney likes the script, and if so, we're going to go out to the marketplace with Clooney plus the script packaged together and find a studio that wants to buy this as a movie or as a TV series or whatever this project is. Now that's fine, but what the guild objects to is the payment process that works in conjunction with that. You may think that agents get 10% of what their clients make. In general, especially at the big agencies, that's not it at all. They don't take anything from what the clients make. Let's suppose this Clooney plus Jonathan Handel script pilot television series actually gets picked up by a studio. Are they going to take 10% of what they negotiate for me and 10% of Clooney's fee? They're not. They're going to take what's called a packaging fee from the studio itself, not paid by the clients, paid by the studio. And the way that packaging fee is calculated is complicated. We don't have to get into it. But the Writers Guild says, you know what? That reduces their incentive to maximize the money that comes to Clooney and Handel. And in fact, notwithstanding the fact that Handel created this television series to begin with, and it turns out to be a really successful series, sometimes the agency makes more money than the creator himself or herself. We don't like that. Finally, a newer practice called affiliated production. The talent agencies, the big three, which is WME, William Morris Endeavor, CAA, and UTA, have all set up affiliated companies that actually substitute for studios and are buyers themselves and do production or production type activities. You're not forced to take your project to them. They are an additional choice in the marketplace. But the Writers Guild says that that's inherently conflicted, that if your agent is also, at least even indirectly, your employer, you don't have an agent to begin with. Now, the irony is that one of the people who's in business with Endeavor Content, the WME affiliated entity, is none other than Bo Willimon, who's the president of the Writers Guild East. So while the Writers Guild East is taking this very strong stand against affiliated production, Bo Willimon is actually availing himself of it because he got a better deal with Endeavor Content than was available from Universal and Disney and whoever else.
So what happened last week where all this blew up?
Well, we've been ticking down towards this April 7th, and last week the Writers Guild met with managers to try to enlist them in their fight against agents, and they met with entertainment lawyers. And the meetings, particularly the meeting with managers, did not go well. The meeting with managers was described in terms that we won't repeat on a family show, but it involved 4-letter words by the managers involved. And what the managers and lawyers both told me, and I interviewed a total of about over 10 of them, was that the Writers Guild didn't seem to have the vaguest idea how the industry really works. They didn't seem to have a plan. They were going to blow things up in a way that would make things worse for writers, that this was cutting off one's nose to spite one's face, in the words of one entertainment lawyer, and that the results were going to be disastrous. Talent agencies are not going to sign on to the new rules the Writers Guild intends to impose April 7th, and writers are going to be forced by Writers Guild rules to therefore leave their agents, because you can't stay with an agent who hasn't signed the current rules. The current rules right now were negotiated jointly between the agencies and the Writers Guild. But as of April 7th, the rules will be rules that the Writers Guild imposes unilaterally, assuming that the union membership approves what the union leadership is doing. There's going to be a vote on March 25th, but the leadership will get their vote. They'll get it in the 90s. The union leaderships almost always do. So we're headed towards what's likely, I think, to be, the Writers Guild says we're not going to compromise on these issues. I think it's likely to be federal court litigation on April 7th, and a very unstable and uncertain situation potentially. Everyone involved is predicting, except the Writers Guild, is predicting utter chaos. The idea that a sort of open submission process with notices on the Writers Guild website, coupled with managers and entertainment attorneys and with people leaving their agents, the idea that that's going to substitute for the existing process, which is driven by, largely by agents, does not seem to be something that people are comfortable with in the least.
It sounds like we've got a recipe for a disaster coming up in about a month.
Potentially so. The Writers Guild is absolutely adamant. The agencies are adamant. There have been a couple of meetings between the two sides, but I would say no real negotiations. It was more talking past each other. There are no meetings scheduled. I don't think there will be any meetings until after this March 25th vote, at which point the Writers Guild will be even more firm in its position that they're not going to compromise. The Writers Guild says, look, these are issues of principle. This is conflict of interest. You don't compromise on principle. But, the reality is the issue of packaging fees could be resolved quite easily in a certain sense it's an issue of money, by compromising and saying, look, if in instances where shows succeed beyond wildest dreams and perhaps an agency is making a lot more potentially than the writers are, rare cases that happens, you share some of the excess above a certain threshold with the writers. It's about money. Money is compromisable. Money is, as lawyers like to say, fungible. It's something that you can. There's more for me, there's less for you. There's more for you, there's less for me. Somewhere in between, you find a compromise point. It's not like the Hollywood 10 and refusing to testify before a malignant Congress. But the Writers Guild has taken a very strong position on this, and their position on the basic issue of power of, do these talent agencies, which in the real world today have an independent existence and enormous amounts of money and power and stature, do they in fact exist just at the sufferance of the Guild and have only so much power as the Guild deigns to give them? That in many ways is the most difficult to compromise issue of all.
Jonathan, we're going to have to keep an eye on this in the coming weeks. For people that want to follow your writing on this, where can they go on the web?
The best place to go for the writing on this is THR Labor, the Hollywood Reporter Labor, thrlabor.com. And you can also visit my website to learn more about me, jhandel.com.
And Jonathan Handel is the contributing editor on entertainment labor issues for The Hollywood Reporter, as well as of counsel at Troy Gould. Jonathan, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks very much.
Join the digital production buzz at the 2019 NAB show in Las Vegas, Nevada. Starting Monday, April 8th, Larry Jordan and the Buzz team are taking their microphones on the road to cover the latest news and trends from the largest media show in the world. Every hour of every day, The Buzz is live on the trade show floor, creating 27 new shows in 4 days. More than 100 interviews with key industry leaders. The Buzz has webcast directly from NAB for 11 years, with legendary coverage that's heard in more than 195 countries around the world. If you're attending the show, visit us at booth SL10527 and say hello, or join us live every day of the show at nabshowbuzz.com. Join us as The Buzz covers NAB 2019 live at nabshowbuzz.com.
Ross Shain is an accomplished visual effects industry veteran and the Chief Product Officer of Mocha with Boris Effects. In 2013, something I had forgotten, Ross was recognized by the Academy of Motion Pictures with a Science and Engineering Academy Award for his and his team's work on the design of Mocha Pro planar tracking software. And Mocha's tools have recently been used in Green Book, which won Best Picture, and First Man, which won Best Visual Effects. Hello, Ross. Welcome back.
Hey, Larry. Thanks for having me.
To get us started, how would you describe Mocha?
Mocha is a motion tracking software that we have been developing for, over 15 years. We use the software to analyze the movement of pixels. Mocha has a very, very powerful tracking engine that could be used to track graphics to the video, it could be used to remove objects, to stabilize objects. It's used for lots of core foundations in visual effects and post.
Well, I've heard the term planar tracker, and from you especially, but what makes a planar tracker different from just simply setting a few tracking points?
Basically, tracking is based on analyzing pixels. And a standard point tracker is going to only be looking at a very small area of pixels. And when those pixels go out of focus, or if the light changes, or if there's motion blur, or if someone's hand, swipes across of that area, that will break a point tracker. Whereas the planar tracker is kind of using a user-defined area to track pixel patterns as opposed to just individual pixels. What this means is that we can track things that go out of focus or track things that are very, very difficult to track. And from our perspective as a team, we've always just looked to make the process simplified so that an editor or just a beginning artist could solve some pretty difficult tasks.
Give me some examples and we'll allow you to brag. How was Mocha used in, say, Green Book or First Man?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about Green Book specifically because we actually featured Victor Di Machina, who is the visual effects supervisor, on our website recently. We interviewed him. And this is actually very cool because the main actor who won Best Supporting Actor this year, his character is a virtuoso piano player. So they actually used Mocha and some visual effects ingenuity to replace the actor's head onto a stunt piano playing double. What they did in Green Book was really, really interesting. There's lots and lots of scenes where you see the main actor, tearing it up, playing this great piano playing. Some of these kinds of ideas do take some foresight, and visual effects supervisors, that's their job, is to think about how visual effects are planned. So Victor was on set with the director, and basically they planned out all the shots where the actor would be playing piano. They brought in a stunt player who's like a virtuoso player who had the same build as the actor, and they would dress him up in the actor's, whether it's a tuxedo or whatever his, he's wearing that particular scene. And they also would calculate the distance between the actor and the camera and make sure that the lighting was exactly the right way. And then they would shoot the actor himself just from the head up on a green screen. And what happens is they end up using Mocha to stabilize both shots. So then you have two stabilized shots. You're going to marry them together using keying and rotoscoping or masking. And then you're going to basically match the movement so that the head from the green screen shot will be married to the body of the stunt double. They did many, many shots using this technique in Green Book, but that's sort of like an example of how in depth that Mocha could be used.
You mentioned one thing that I want to follow up on. You said that one of the reasons the visual effects supervisor was on set is to plan the effect. Many times we view effects as being something we do after all the shooting is done. What do you recommend for planning visual effects?
That's a great question, and I think that a lot of people hear the term fix it in post, and they might get to an edit session, and then the producer and the editor look at each other and say, "Oh, we'll fix it in post," and we'll send that shot to a specialist. And that's all well and good, but actually planning productions is a huge part of visual effects. There are specialists like visual effects supervisors that are paid to go on set, work with directors. But this kind of idea does not have to be just high-end productions. With some thought into how you shoot, how things are lit, definitely kind of understanding the relationship and the distance between the camera and your object, very important. But also thinking about areas that could be motion tracked. So if you're shooting something on a green screen, it can be very useful to add markers to the green screen. But definitely thinking about these kind of things is a real important part of the visual effects process.
One of the things that I'm excited about is NAB, which is our annual trade show, comes up next month, and everything seems to change at that show. What are you looking at in terms of technology trends? I'm not interested specifically in product announcements, but technology trends that you're expecting at NAB.
The things that I'm interested in seeing this year are volumetric capturing. What is volumetric capture? Just think of it as holograms. As the industry pushes into the VR and the AR space, we're seeing a lot of interest in that hologram aspect, a full 3D capture of performances. And I definitely think that volumetric capture is going to be a buzz at NAB. On the software side, there's been a lot of talk about AI tools and machine learning assisting post-production. So I think you'll also see that will be a buzz as well.
How can you see machine learning help with effects?
The largest portion of effects really is like isolating objects, tracking, cleaning up. Sometimes it's resizing, sometimes it's replacing objects and these kinds of things. And I think what you're seeing, even the Adobe Sensei kind of stuff, we're beginning to see a lot of commercial software developers incorporating AI techniques to assist with repetitive processes. And the idea is that large data sets of video clips, extremely large sets, can actually help an AI or machine learning application understand a lot more about the footage, and will eventually be able to be incorporated to help automate some of the tasks that an editor or a visual effects or motion designer does every day. So lots of exciting things.
Thinking about exciting news, you guys have already made some exciting news. Late last year, you announced new versions of Sapphire and Mocha and Continuum. What's in the new products?
So Sapphire is sort of like the flagship plugin package for visual effects artists, motion graphics creators. Boris Effects acquired GenArts. At this point, I think it was 2.5 years ago. Sapphire has some nice new features. Lens flares has been sort of the bread and butter of Sapphire, very, very popular. You see it in all the J.J. Abrams Star Wars type of films. The lens flare designer has been totally revamped. There's also some new creative effects to do sort of like a pixel sorting, sort of a very kind of current look to kind of, it's like sort of the modern version of digital damage kind of thing. On the Continuum side, again, another plugin package that we make that is very popular within the Avid and the Premiere communities for editing. We've added a new product. Well, it's actually a revive of an old product called Particle Illusion, which is a real-time particle generation system that's now included in Boris Continuum. And this is very like realistic smoke and fires and sparkles that an editor or a motion graphics artist can add to a scene, but they don't. It's very, very easy to learn. And I think that's the heart of Particle Illusion, is that you can just drop on an effect and adding some realism without ever going into a 3D application. So that's a really cool thing. And then on the Mocha side, we've just kind of continued to improve Mocha for tracking, for object removal, for 360 VR, for the 360 creators. We've improved the rotoscoping tools in Mocha as well. Lots of announcements came out in the late fall for Boris Effects, and we'll be showing those all at NAB.
Very cool. For people who want more information about all the products that Boris Effects has, where can they go on the web?
Go to boriseffects.com, and we have hundreds of video tutorials and product pages, and lots of great content for users to explore, and as well as download free trials.
That website is all one word, BORISFX, boriseffects.com. And Ross Shain is the Chief Product Officer of Mocha with Boris Effects. And Ross, thanks for joining us today.
Always great to talk to you, Larry. Appreciate it.
After a 20-year career in both audio and video, Joseph Nilo creates tutorial videos, product, and software reviews for the FX Factory YouTube channel as their head of training. Hello, Joseph. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Before we talk about what you do, set the scene. How would you describe FX Factory?
FX Factory is the app store for Pro Video. It's a Mac download, and it's a single download of the App Store, and what's loaded up are thousands of visual effects plugins from independent developers and from FX Factory themselves, and they also work in Final Cut Pro, Motion, After Effects, Premiere Pro, and some audio plugins are even trickling into GarageBand, Logic Pro, things like that. So it's just a one-stop shop for all sorts of great visual effects.
What does the head of training do for an app store?
There's so many products that come out that at least 4 to 8 times a month there's new products that I create screencast tutorials for, so people can learn more about what's coming out and get a quick overview as well.
Why you? Why not the developer?
From a branding standpoint, it's good to have one voice. There are some developers that do some of their own tutorials as well, but when it's all funneled through me, there's a good branding, and you know what you're going to get from our 2 to 3 minute videos that we put out.
I've seen many of your demos and many of your training videos because I keep getting bombarded with FX Factory emails. How do you plan one of your demos? What's the process you go through?
It moves pretty quickly because there's so much coming out. I interface with Nicholas, who is, the CEO, I think is his title, of FX Factory, the grand poobah over there. As new products come out, I get a license and an overview and a bunch of assets from the developer. I work with the developer creating a script and kind of coming up with a real world example on what their plugins might do. And then we just turn around a screencast video with a teaser and examples and then how to use them, and then boom, and out. There's so many plugins, it's hard to keep up.
Well, you're talking to filmmakers. What tools do you use to create the demos?
I use, many of their plugins are in Final Cut Pro, so we're creating them right there. I use ScreenFlow to grab the screen captures. I actually bounce over to Premiere Pro to do a lot of the editing and using After Effects for any of the graphics. And then just on the workflow standpoint, I share editorial responsibilities with my partner in San Francisco. I'm on the East Coast, so we work right out of Dropbox. It lends for a very quick workflow, and we can turn these around, like I said, 4 to 8 videos a week. I'm sorry, per month. 48 videos a week would be way too many, but yeah, we can turn them around quickly.
Tonight, we're looking ahead to NAB. What technology trends relating to effects are you expecting? What's going to be hot?
It's hard to keep up. When I go to NAB and I walk around on the floor, I'm just as wide-eyed as anybody else. From my standpoint, I tend to be excited about the software announcements to see what's coming from Adobe and Cinema 4D and some of the on the software side of things. When it comes to trends, I like to see less and less of visual effects because they become more ingrained in reality, if that makes sense. I want to go along for the ride. I want to see a motion captured actor that looks perfect. I want to see graphics on screen and UI that are flawless, and just go along for the ride whenever I'm going to see a movie. On the other side of things, my world is more in the corporate world. When it comes to graphics, it's always changing. I'm seeing more colorful palettes coming out. I'm seeing these kind of retro 2D animations are very big right now. Maybe a mix with those 2D graphics, a mix of the actual 3D elements as well. So it's hard to keep up. I watch as many movies as I can, and when I can see commercials, which I don't as much anymore, I'm blown away with what's coming out of Hollywood and New York City and all the big markets.
FX Factory also has a YouTube channel. What's your role with that?
For many years now. I think I've had to look back, and I've been doing videos for FX Factory since 2008.
Oh, my goodness.
I've done, 1 million videos at this point? I have no idea. It's been going and going and going. And it's fun, too. I was telling Nicholas the other day, if this were accounting software, I would be way less excited. But because I'm a video professional, I get all the new plugins. I get to play with them and create videos for them. But what we're trying to do with the YouTube channel is make it more of a pro video portal. So, it's not just pushing their products all the time. It's, whatever I can think of, showing my different workflow stuff, bigger subject matter like, or I should say more specific subject matter like, how to do a proper green screen or how to stack a bunch of plugins on 3D animations to make them more realistic or color correction, So there's more of interest to different people, not just the FX Factory plugins.
As you look at the plugins that are being developed by developers, does it go in waves? Are you seeing that some things are popular at one time and other things are popular at another? And if so, what's a hot wave right now?
The big wave right now is there's a lot going on in the Final Cut Pro world. I do probably 80% of my work in Premiere Pro, but I end up jumping over to Final Cut Pro just to use these FX Factory plugins. And what I'm seeing are a lot of text animations and infographics and professionally animated elements that you can create, for the corporate environment or for social media videos, things like that. So there's just tons of stuff coming out there that, makes the professional video editor's job a lot easier and creates just gorgeous graphics with, you don't have to do them by hand, just great looking templates. It's
interesting how social media has so totally changed how we approach creating videos, especially for the corporate market. Would you agree?
Yes, you have to kind of roll with it when you're a professional. So yes, doing things a little bit differently, creating square videos and putting titles and click here and subscribe here. We're having to do a lot more for our clients for social media. Yes.
What's your most interesting plugin over the last few months? What one made you giggle when you saw it?
I giggle all day long. That's how I am. What I was just saying about those the text and some of the pre-built animations. There's a developer called Premium VFX, nice folks out of Brazil, and they make just really gorgeous text animations and infographics and transitions that just kind of add a real dynamic flair to everything and allow you to fly your text around. I just think back to when if you want to come up with a gorgeous looking infographic, you would sit down and spend 6 hours in After Effects or buy this plugin and it's been done for you and it's gorgeous. So anytime I can make my job easier and please the client, that makes me happy. So Premium VFX, they have some great stuff.
For people who want to explore the App Store of visual effects, where can they go on the web?
Go to fxfactory.com and it's a free download and you get to try everything out for free.
That website is all one word, the letter F, the letter X, FX Factory, and Joseph Nilo is the head of training for FX Factory. And Joseph, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Here's another website I want to introduce you to, doddleNEWS.com. DoddleNEWS gives you a portal into the broadcast, video, and film industries. It's a leading online resource presenting news, reviews, and products for the film and video industry. DoddleNEWS also offers a resource guide and crew management platform specifically designed for production. These digital call sheets, along with their app, directory, and premium listings, provide in-depth organizational tools for busy production professionals. DoddleNEWS is a part of the Thalo Arts community, a worldwide community of artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. From photography to filmmaking, performing arts to fine arts, and everything in between, Thalo is filled with resources you need to succeed. Whether you want the latest industry news, need to network with other creative professionals, or require state-of-the-art online tools to manage your next project, there's only one place to go, doddleNEWS.com. For this week's NAB Insight, I want to introduce William Goldenberg. He won the Academy Award, BAFTA, and ACE Award for film editing with Ben Affleck's Best Picture winner, Argo, and received Oscar, BAFTA, and ACE nominations for editing The Imitation Game and Zero Dark 30. He's also been nominated for an Oscar for film editing with Seabiscuit and the insider. Hello, William. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I could spend an hour just talking with you about The Imitation Game, and I rewatch Seabiscuit every 6 months because it's such a great story that's well told. So congratulations on your career.
Well, thank you. It's been a fun ride.
You're keynoting the upcoming Future of Cinema conference at the 2019 NAB show, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But first, what got you started as an editor?
Well, while I was in college, Temple University in Philadelphia, I was originally planning on being a doctor. In my senior year, I had a class called Experimental Video. Did a lot of editing and overwhelmingly frightened to show any of it to anybody. In the last week of school, I was like, instead of showing my final project, I showed all my projects. The professor was very enthusiastic about my ability as an editor, and I loved doing it, and he was very complimentary about it, and everything seemed to sort of click at that moment. And so when I moved to California right after graduation, I came here with the idea of being a film editor, but didn't really know how to do it. After about 8 months getting a job as a PA for a small television production company, they were about to make a television movie. They asked me if I wanted to be an on-set PA. But I asked them if I could be the apprentice editor, and fortunately for me, they said yes. And then ultimately, after a few years, I ended up working for Michael Kahn, who is Steven Spielberg's editor.
How did you connect up with Mr. Kahn?
I was working on a film called Punchline with an editor named Bruce Green, who I worked for on several films. And Bruce had been Michael's first assistant during the Indiana Jones years. Michael was looking for a new first assistant, and Bruce recommended me, and I went and interviewed with Michael. We hit it off, and he hired me. When the opportunity came up to work with Michael, I realized that was a great way for me to have somebody as a mentor. I mean, he mentored Bruce. He mentored many other editors who were his assistants, and I saw an opportunity to get mentored by probably, arguably one of the top 5 film editors of all time. So Michael and I hit it off, and he was able to train me, I guess, in his philosophy about editing.
What were some of the key things he taught you?
The biggest lesson he taught me was how to take criticism. What I do is take criticism for a living. Mostly people don't say the good things, they say the bad things when they watch the film, when you're in the process of trying to make the film as best it can be. You show the studio, you show other people, and mostly what you hear are the bad things. And what Michael taught me was not to take it personally, was to embrace notes and changes and criticism with enthusiasm and with curiosity, as opposed to getting your feelings hurt. Because ultimately, it's not about me; it's about the film and what's best for the film. The criticism isn't meant at me personally; it's just what's working and what's not working in the film. Amongst the 50 or 60 other things he taught me, that was the most important.
Let's put your editing hat on. I want to give you a couple of scenarios and have you tell me what your thought process is. When you're first attached to a project, what's your process as you think about the editing ahead? How do you get started?
Well, what I do is I'll read the script, obviously, and discuss the screenplay with the director and understand what kind of film he or she is trying to make. The more discussions I have with the director, the more I have their thoughts running through my brain while I'm cutting, why they're shooting with this certain style, why, what they're going for, what kind of, is it what kind of tone, and they're trying to set with the film. And that's really one of the most important things, is understanding the tone that the film is. Then I'll do is, depends on what the subject matter is. So I'll do as much research as I can about what really happened. If the story is based on a book, I'll read the book. Try and get as familiar with the subject matter as possible, what the characters would really be, what kind of lives they'd really be living. So, and also what I'll do is I listen to a lot of music, movie scores or existing music songs, to try and set a sort of soundscape for what the music will eventually be by creating a blueprint for the composer by using temp music. So I'll listen to a ton of music and make myself a working library and make notes about what I like about certain things, so that when I'm in a scene, whether it's like an action scene or an emotional scene, I'll hopefully have listened to music before I've gotten started. So I say, well, this might work, that might work, and it really helps, I think, give the composer a blueprint about how music should be used in the film. So those are the things I do to sort of get myself ready.
We're now in the middle of cutting, and you're about to cut a fight scene. What are you looking for in coverage, and how do you approach it?
A fight scene, or any action scene, I'm hoping that there's a story. The best action scenes are ones with a story, where there's a beginning, middle, and end, and not just, here's a good place for a lot of action. What I'll generally try and do is know what that story is and try and tell that story through even though it's maybe a fight. Hopefully there's a story to that fight, not just we're going to beat the crap out of each other. On the other side of that scene, there's some sort of story element that's evolved. Also looking for a lot of pieces of film that make it personal, because I think what grabs an audience is, latching on to the story and then also the characters. So I'm looking for beats where, you really see if one person is losing in the fight, they're looking really distressed. And I mean, I know it sounds simple, but a lot of times, I think editors get trapped into like a lot of flash and a lot of kind of fancy editing. But when it's not, when the audience doesn't feel like they're with the characters, I think, we as filmmakers lose the audience. So I'm also looking to really personalize, any action scene. I'm looking to personalize it so you're being carried through by either a story element or the actor or the character's journey. So it's always trying to latch on to something that's personal.
How do you tell the director they don't have enough coverage?
I mean, but you really are part psychologist. You're trying to make, sort of perk up the director when they're, if you have a director who's like had a horrible day, and, maybe, hey, take a look at this scene I cut. It came out great. And, try and boost their spirits by showing them something that's going to say, hey, you had a hard day, but look, this stuff really works. And get them back, enthusiastic about going back and shoot the next day. And I feel like that's part of my job, to you don't want to bullshit the director, but you want to like keep their spirits high, keep their enthusiasm high, because it's a incredibly difficult job to direct a feature film. So and there's going to be highs and lows. You want to try and eliminate as many lows as possible.
What's a hard scene for you to edit, and what makes it difficult?
That's a funny question, because there can be a scene with one character or two characters, and it's very simple, and that can be harder than a scene with 50,000 feet of film and a million characters, and it depends on so many different factors. What the acting is like, what the coverage is like. I'd say one of the hardest scenes I ever cut was the raid in 0 Dark 30. And it was hard because it was so real in terms of the way it was lit and shot, so it was very dark. All the SEALs are wearing basically the same uniform with night vision goggles on. And you're in a compound with a lot of white walls and a lot of different hallways and rooms, and people are spread out all over the compound. And so keeping the geography straight of what was going on for the audience, of all these different things that are going on simultaneously, that's incredibly difficult. When these things are all happening at exactly the same time, so how do you show the audience that and not confuse them? In that situation, we came up, there was a sniper that was on the roof of one of the buildings in the compound that they stationed, and we kind of used him as a jumping off point. His shots up on top and sort of reorient the audience. So it seems like that can be very difficult. You're just using your instincts about, like, okay, well, I think this makes sense. I think this is clear. But you really don't know until you show an audience.
Editing is one of those jobs where when you've done excellent work, nobody notices. I've always found that frustrating. How do you deal with pouring all your energy into making a scene work only to have nobody notice? They just say, yeah.
I get a feeling when I take a huge amount of film and where I'm sitting at the beginning of cutting a scene where there's a huge amount of film and there's issues with performance or coverage or whatever. There's no issues. It's just a really, emotionally difficult scene, and, and scenes can be difficult in so many ways. But when I put it together and I know that it works, I don't need somebody to pat me on the back. I like it. I don't need to be famous. I just want to do a good job and, tell good stories. And that's all. That's enough for me, I like being in the unsung hero role. It's okay for me.
In April, you're keynoting the Future of Cinema conference. From my understanding, this is a discussion. What's the purpose of it?
The purpose is to give others some insight, give some, hopefully, people who don't have as much experience as I do, or, haven't worked on the sort of films that I've worked on, to give them, insight into what I think makes good editing, makes good editors, and give them a little bit of my background to understand, the process of starting from a college student all the way to hopefully cutting feature film. So, and then give them some insights into how I cut, and why I cut. Like I said, give some insight into what I think editing is and how to get there.
Well, as you know, the creative media industry is under a lot of stress today. Competition, budgets, technology changes. What do you see as the future of cinema?
I see, it's an ever-evolving thing, and I think that, obviously streaming, all these streaming services, I think that's going to continue, and I think that content's coming from everywhere now. And there's a big discussion about what makes a feature film. Is it a feature film if it's a Netflix film? Is it not? But I think that all these content providers, and all this competition there's some fantastic feature films being made, Netflix films, Netflix series, Amazon series. There's so much wonderful content. So I don't know what it holds in store for the business in terms of financially and all that, the business model of it all. But I know creatively, I think it's just fantastic. There's so much good material, so much good content, that there isn't a day that goes by where somebody will say to me, "Have you seen this series, or have you seen this Netflix show, or have you seen this show on like Paramount streaming service?" And the things I'd never heard of. There's so much good stuff. I mean, as compared to 10, 15 years ago, I mean, not that there wasn't good product, but there wasn't nearly what it is now. And television has become sort of just such a wonderful, they're telling wonderful stories and, big budget projects. And it's just, I think, all fantastic. I mean, the discussion about like what constitutes a feature film and what doesn't, I mean, that's important. But I think what's most important anyway is telling great stories. So I see the future as bright. I mean, I don't know about in terms of the creative element of it. I can't speak to the financial element or the arguments about, like I said, what's a feature and what's not. But I think creatively, it's really a wonderful time.
That presentation is called The Future of Cinema. It's a conference, a special track conference at the 2019 NAB show, and you can learn more about it by visiting nabshow.com. As a last comment, what advice do you have for filmmakers who are in the middle of their career and just need some enthusiastic comment to keep charging forward against all the resistance that we're seeing in our industry today?
Keep trying to tell great stories. The thing that I love about my job is being a storyteller. I've never lost my enthusiasm for that, whether I'm working on a project that is a smaller project that I'm not really even that interested in, but just needed a job, or the most satisfying project I've ever worked on. That I always get the same sort of jolt of energy and from the fact that I've told a great story, and that's whether it's a scene that I'm cutting. It's always to me about being a storyteller, and I've never lost sight of how much fun that is. It always gets me excited about just being lucky enough to be an editor.
William Goldenberg is an ACE editor, an Academy Award, BAFTA, and ACE award-winning editor, and has edited most of the great films we've seen in the recent past. William, thanks for joining us today.
All right. Well, my pleasure. Thank you.
I was just thinking, a press release from Frame.io caught my eye this morning. Emery Wells, the CEO of Frame.io, announced that Frame.io is, quote, now SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. This means that Frame.io successfully completed a rigorous ongoing security audit that demonstrates Frame.io not only met, but far exceeded current industry security standards. This security audit is, according to Frame.io, the gold standard for security compliance for software-as-a-service companies. Type 1 compliance, which they passed a while ago, defines security at a specific point in time, meaning that Frame.io demonstrated to external third-party auditors their ability to successfully design and implement security controls, policies, and procedures to secure and encrypt your media on their service. Type 2 compliance, which they announced today, is much more rigorous. This requires that Frame.io demonstrate their ability to maintain those same security controls, policies, procedures, and standards successfully throughout the examination period from July until today without any exception. These are standards that cover the training of employees, to the distribution of company software and hardware, and even to the protocols for guests that visit their New York headquarters. This audit included examination of their policies and procedures regarding network connectivity, firewall configurations, systems development lifecycle, computer operations, logical access, data transmission, backup and disaster recovery, and other critical operational areas of their business. The reason I mention this is that many times when I talk to tech companies, they make a big deal of how the security of your data is important to them. But almost none of these companies have gone to the lengths that Frame.io has to prove that your data is secure. Talk is cheap, and as we've seen over and over, especially in social media, it is easy to promise security while not actually delivering anything of substance. Frame.io has put their money, and I mean lots of money, into living up to their promises to keep our data secure. This is a major accomplishment, and they deserve congratulations. If you want to learn more, or, more importantly, understand the kinds of questions you should actually be asking your cloud vendors, visit the Frame.io website. They have set a high bar for other service companies to meet. Just something I'm thinking about. I want to thank our guests this week: film editor William Goldenberg, Ross Shain with Boris FX, Joseph Nilo with FX Factory, Jonathan Handel with The Hollywood Reporter, and James DeRuvo with doddleNEWS.com. There's a lot of history in our industry, and it's all posted to our website at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Here you'll find thousands of interviews, all online and all available to you today. And remember to sign up for our free weekly show newsletter that comes out every Saturday. Talk with us on Twitter at DPBuzz and Facebook at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Our theme music is composed by Nathan Doogie Turner, with additional music provided by smartsound.com. Our producer is Debbie Price. My name is Larry Jordan, and thanks for listening to the Digital Production Buzz. The Digital Production Buzz is copyright 2019 by Thalo LLC.